Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about Crown and Skull in context to Dungeons & Dragons. So what is Crown and Skull? It's a brand new tabletop role-playing game. It's about a year old now, I'd say. Maybe, yeah. I don't even think it's a year old. But it's brought out by Runehammer Games. Runehammer Games, if you don't know, Hankard Farinawe, absolutely phenomenal. Literally the best rules designer in all of tabletop role-playing, without exception. Also, a phenomenal artist. He has this really unique black, white, and red, black and white, and in index card RPG red art style. And Runehammer Games created Index Card RPG, which is really phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, really robust and very cool tabletop role-playing alternative to Dungeons & Dragons, which I absolutely love. It's actually my second favorite. So, of course, Dungeons & Dragons is the best tabletop role-playing experience you can ever get, period. Now, I will say, I really believe Crown and Skull and Index Card RPG both have superior rules to Dungeons & Dragons. But if you know, you know, right? And the reality is we now know the best tabletop role-playing experience is not the best, it's not the one that has the best rules. Well, I think that's a very common mistake that people understand. They think the entirety of a tabletop role-playing system is its rules, and that's not the case. Dungeons & Dragons comes correct, right? It comes with tradition, it comes with lore, it comes with settings, it comes with goodwill. Americans have goodwill for Dungeons & Dragons. They have a knowledge of its history, right? And that's Muggle Americans, right? So it's kind of a big deal. So I did want to kind of throw that out there. Today we're going to talk about Crown and Skull, and we're going to talk about Attrition, which is and we're talking about what is different about Crown and Skull. If you run Crown and Skull rules, right, for your Dungeons & Dragons settings or any other setting you want, right? If you get the Crown and Skull book, you can run the rule set because the rules are very tight. The difference is Crown and Skull is hero points, attrition, phases, no to hit roll. That's huge. It's its own thing. No to hit roll. That's a very big deal. It means that every martial class is immediately extremely powerful. And by the way, that no to hit roll, that's not the case for magic. There are rolls for magic. Magic is a lot more finicky and a lot more fail prone than swinging a sword, which it should be, right? So Crown and Skull is hero points, attrition, phases, no to hit roll, right? And that's it. It's very different than Dungeons & Dragons. It's fundamentally different from Dungeons & Dragons. Really critically different than Dungeons & Dragons, right? But its differences aren't that many, right? So today I want to talk about attrition. So let's talk about attrition. So attrition in Crown and Skull is that, so basically this is astonishing. Every Crown and Skull character, player character, has 20 hit points. Okay, like what? Now they might have a little less, and generally they're not going to have more. It's 20 hit points. So you're like, what? Are you kidding? No, I'm not kidding. This is real, right? And so one, without it, now you're like, oh, that means it's incredibly deadly. Not necessarily. There's lots of ways for your character to avoid ever being hit, right? So, and the reality is, in my humble opinion, Dungeons & Dragons can be quite deadly. I think whenever you hear some crusty grognard like, oh, Dungeons & Dragons isn't deadly. No, it is quite deadly. You don't know how to run it. That's the problem, right? So Dungeons & Dragons can be wicked deadly, right? But the reality is, both Dungeons & Dragons and the Crown and Skull are deadly. I would actually not even say that Crown and Skull is even more effectively deadly. Actually, I will. It is, I would say it's about a third more deadly, right? And the other thing is the combats are much, much faster, which would make most players think it is more deadly. It's not more deadly. You're just telling the story way faster, right? And so basically, attrition is your hit points are, you have 20 hit points. Now, what are those hit points? This is incredible. Your hit points are 10 skills and 10 pieces of equipment, okay? And basically, when you take a single hit point of damage, so if you get hit for D6, so a longsword will do D8. I'm sorry, yeah, a longsword will do D6 damage. Okay, let's say you take 4 points of damage. You need, depending on what you need to get rid of 3. You need, so like you roll a D6, you get a 3. You need to get rid of 3 skills, or you need to get 3. Or you need to damage 3 pieces of equipment, right? And they're not going to be usable until they're repaired, and your skills are not going to be usable until you're healed. Okay, so you need to get rid of 3 skills or damage 3 pieces of equipment, or you can mix it up. You can get rid of 1 skill and 2 pieces of equipment, or you can damage 2 pieces of equipment and get rid of 1 skill, right? And the skill, you're going to get it back as soon as you heal. The equipment, you're going to get it back as soon as you repair it. Okay. Now there are different types of attrition, right? So there are types of attrition where it will literally destroy equipment. The equipment is gone, right? That's huge. Right? Now you're like, wait a second, Scott, does that mean it's going to destroy magical items? That's a good point, right? It could absolutely destroy a potion of healing, right? But let's say you have some epic sword, right? Like, like Sting, right? That's not going to be destroyed, right? That can only be damaged, right? So really powerful magic items are never destroyed. They're just damaged, right? So you're not going to lose all. So it's not so like brutal to the player characters that you lose magic items that you spend a lot of time getting, right? So that's pretty incredible. But this thing, it's incredible because it means that, and then basically as you take damage, you have less and less equipment, and you have less and less skills that can be used, right? Most people they'll get rid of their, they'll cross off their skill that is not going to be used in combat first, right? So, but it means that every hit point matters, and this dramatically changes how Crown and Skull rolls, and how it works. Attrition is astonishing. It is really, really fascinating. I cannot suggest Crown and Skull highly enough. Thank you for letting me, kind of share my experience of Crown and Skull with you. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion on Crown and Skull's brilliant attrition rules mechanic. The important part is when I hear your humble opinion on Crown and Skull, on Dungeons and Dragons, and on anything that's important to you today. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.